What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in to this week's Pinball FX tournament video. In this video, I'm going to discuss the Grimm Tales one ball challenge we had from last week, and then we only have two more Zen originals left to do, which is Vern's Mysterious Island and Wrath of the Elder Gods. And that will be it. And then we'll complete the Zen originals. So for this week, we're going to do a one ball tournament on Vern's Mysterious Island, just because it's a table that I am a sort of familiar with, but not as familiar as I am with Wrath of the Elder Gods, because I've played Wrath of the Elder Gods and the Director's Cut on Pinball M. So it's kind of a table that I wanted to put last. So this week we're going to do Vern's Mysterious Island, and then after that we'll do Wrath of the Elder Gods, and then the Zen Originals will be complete. And then I'll put up a vote on the community tab and ask you guys if we should do Marvel tables next or if we should do Star Wars. So that will be a vote. I'm leaning more towards Marvel tables because they're all kind of different, whereas Star Wars are all kind of set in the same universe. So I'm hoping it's Marvel, but I'm going to leave the vote up to you guys. So let's talk about this week's tournament. But before I get into the table itself, I want to talk to you and give you some context about fairy tales. So Grimm Tales is a table that is based on a few classic fairy tales. And so let's talk about the concept of fairy tales first. So fairy tales grew out of an oral storytelling tradition, right? About magical creatures, fantastical worlds, and they leaned on moral lessons. One of the big things that I noticed, I was watching an episode from Roseanne, a 90s sitcom, and their electricity went out because they didn't pay the bill, right? So they're sitting in the living room, all the lights are out with some candles and flashlights, and they're telling stories. And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of how fairy tales started. Because back, I would say fairy tales started, pretty much even before humans began talking. I would say even the prehistoric ages when we had cavemen, before human speech and language. I think people were telling stories with writings and drawings, right, on the wall, the caveman drawings. So I think they go really far back in time. And but the fairy tales that I will speak of, pretty much started in the 1500s when they were recorded and they could be, transcribed. But what's important to know is that fairy tales, for the most part, grew from oral storytelling traditions. And this was a form of entertainment before you had what we have today: TV, television, electronics, phones. So this was something that when you would tell stories, they would pass it down from generation to generation, and it was like a form of entertainment. You'd sit around, you'd listen to a story, and that was kind of your entertainment. So they have a lot of fairy tales have a lot of history, a lot of rich history. I think the great thing about storytelling is that it implores us to use our imagination, right? Because when someone's telling you a story, you got to picture yourself in the 1500s, someone's telling you a story. Everything that you're hearing, you're imagining, you're creating these worlds in your head. You're listening to the story, but what you're seeing is in your head. So it's a lot of imagination, right? Whereas today, you watch TV, there's not a lot left to be imagined, right? You kind of get everything given to you. So like I said earlier, fairy tales started, the tradition was, I'd say, as long as humans have existed, but they really didn't start becoming recorded and transcribed until the 1500s in Italy. And then you had the Brothers Grimm from Germany in the 1800s. And what they did was they collected folk stories across Europe, making tales like Hansel and Gretel, Snow White, Rumpelstiltskin, and the Frog Prince. And they kind of made their tone a little darker and added morals. So you'll hear the brothers Grimm quite a lot when you speak about fairy tales. Then you had Hans Christian Andersen from Denmark, also around the same time in the 1800s. But he wrote his own fairy tales, such as The Little Mermaid, The Snow Queen, Thumbelina, Ugly Duckling. And I've heard of a lot of these. You've probably heard them too, you know. And I think that's the kind of the interesting thing about how it's been passed on from generation to generation, culture to culture. And you'll find cultures have their own variations of fairy tales, right? Which I think is pretty cool as well. So, you know, Walt Disney, you're probably familiar with Walt Disney, the animation studio company, adapted a lot of these classic fairy tales and put them into animated films. Snow White from 1937, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast was one of my favorites growing up. Just the story and, you know, just the concept of it. So it's a classic to me. Beauty and the Beast. I love the soundtrack. One of the best soundtracks in my opinion. But there's also been a lot of other fairy tales like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, Jack and the Beanstalk, The Three Little Pigs. So there's a lot of stories, a lot of fairy tales. And Grimm Tales covers, I think, 7 of the classic ones. But it's this concept of story-driven tables like we had in Who Done It, right? Where you had a lot of clues. So Grimm Tales and even tables like Tales of the Arabian Nights, which is based on Middle Eastern folklore, is another example. And I think it's important to realize that when pinball, and as pinball progressed, story-driven tables were becoming more of an element that designers wanted to do, right? Because at the beginning, like with EMs and early solid states, there wasn't much of a story. It was more focused on the design, the design, the mechanics. But as technology, when you had the addition of the dot matrix display, and I guess the addition of speech and sound in pinball, that's when designers started kind of wanting to add more layers. And that's where you see story driven tables like Tales of the Arabian Nights, even Who Done It, and even Attack from Mars, right? These are the stories like you're trying to save the planet from aliens, right? And Attack from Mars. But going back to fairy tale tables, you also have the Princess Bride table, which is a Zen original based off the movie, which I did a pinball on a movie for. You have Snow Queen from Gottlieb, released in 1971. You have Aladdin's Castle from Bali, released in 1976. Genie, Magic Castle from Zakaria. Even more recent ones like Wizard of Oz from Jersey Jack, Lord of the Rings from Stern, The Hobbit, also from Jersey Jack, and Dungeons and Dragons from Stern, which is another like fantastical, epic kind of table. You also have video games based on fairy tales. The Wolf Among Us, Kingdom Hearts, The Witcher series. There's probably a lot more, but fairy tales and video games and pinball, are kind of a go together in a way, right? It's not like a far stretch like some other themes, but I think when you're talking about a storytelling theme, fairy tales are pretty interesting kind of theme to choose for pinball. Not one that I would immediately think of, but one time I posed this question to Dom and I asked him, are there any, come to think of it, I don't think there's any pinball tables that are based off of books or novels directly, right? They're based on movies that are based on books, but fairy tales is like pinball based on like, written folklore. But that, I guess, too, a lot of fairy tales have been, translated and adapted into movies too. So I guess it's a hard, direct translation. But I would be interested if a pinball table was ever based on a book alone that hadn't been adapted into a movie. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about fairy tales. That they pretty much started since humans have existed, but they were different. In caveman time, it was drawings, I think, and that was how fairy tales were told. That's how stories were told, and then you had more of an oral tradition. When speech was, when we had patterns of speech, in the 1500s in Italy, and 1800s with the brothers Grimm in Germany, and Hans Christian Andersen in Denmark. And then you had, Walt Disney adapting a lot of these into motion pictures, into animations, short films. The Grimm Tales table, I think I played it. I was playing the 3-ball, the regular classic, and I think it's actually a really good table. My only thing about this table is that the modes themselves, some of them are very hard to complete. And I think, because there's a wizard mode, I think, right, where you lock in 7 balls for the rescue of the princess. And I never got there, but I think that you actually have to complete these modes to get to the wizard mode, and some of these modes are kind of difficult. But I think the table itself is done really well. It's just a joy to play. You get multi-ball, you got crystal multi-ball. It's very fantastical. Okay, wait. I just wanted to mention something else. Hold up. This is kind of related, but I was watching The Labyrinth yesterday for the first time. Jim Henson's Labyrinth with David Bowie, and that was a kind of trippy movie, but it has a lot of elements of fairy tale and folklore. And so if you haven't seen Labyrinth, I definitely recommend it. I thought it reminded me a bit of Legend with Tom Cruise, kind of the same 80s vibe. But, it's about, this girl trying to figure her way out in a labyrinth and rescue her brother. And she meets a lot of, interesting creatures along the way. But there was this scene, it's like a riddle. If you're familiar with the movie Labyrinth, you might know the riddle. It's like the door, right? There's these 2 doors, and you have these 2 guards guarding each door, and they're telling her, one guard's telling her, one of us always tells the truth, and the other one always lies, and then she has to figure out which door. But it's such a logical twist. So it's a scene that that you guys might like, but it just gave me such a mind twist, right? But yeah, Labyrinth is also a pinball table that I would put into this fairy tale table. That's also an actual table. I think from Jersey Jack as well. So yeah, going back to Grimm Tales, I think that it's a really nice table. Maybe not for 1 ball, but I think on a classic where you can get a few extra balls, you can work towards that wizard mode. And it's presented really nice. You have the castle. You have nice call-outs. You have that little book turning pages. So it definitely fits the theme well. And then in the background, you can see the witch's brew and the candles. So it's very, definitely puts you in the mood there. But let's go to the tournament now. It was a closed tournament. We had 7 people, and I gotta give a congratulations to Balchi, because Balchi, he came in second in that grand tournament on Party Zone, and he had 1 billion points. So it's unbelievable that he came in second, which is still good, but I really thought he was going to have first. So congratulations to King Balchi for getting this score of 683 million with one ball. Because that would put him in the... I think that score is at least in the top 10 on one ball. So congratulations, jubilations, King Balchi. Okay, that singing is getting worse because I forget how the melody goes. But I hope you enjoyed that or not. But that's a really good score, Balchi, and I'm sure you got to wizard mode with that score, right? I came in second with 147 million, which I'm happy about because I was sitting in last for a while until I used a lot of my attempts. We have Bad Jack Daniels in third for the top three with 64 million points. Congratulations to Bad Jack. Fourth place, we have UTD 4000 with 51 million. Underneath him, we have Carpy Sun in fifth place with 45 million. And in sixth place, we have Gatvic with 26 million points. And then seventh place, we have my friend Urko with 22 million points. So the scores are kind of all over the place, and I think that's just because of the table. Because, there's so many ways to score. It's like you could have gone any way. You can keep on, spam multi-balls with the jet multi-ball. You can get your multiplier to 10. So there's different ways to score. But I hope you guys enjoyed this week's tournament on Grimm Tales. I know we're coming off the Williams tables, and not everyone is a fan of the Zen Originals. But we're going to finish up. We're going to create a tournament now on Vern's Mysterious Island, right? So this is an open tournament, unlimited attempts, which is good. And like I said, we have one more table, Wrath of the Elder Gods, and then we're done with Zen Originals. So we're going to do this, public. It'll be a one-ball challenge, unlimited players, unlimited attempts. 6 days, right? 6 days. But you know what? I was thinking, should I change it to classic? To make it different? Or should I keep it one ball? I'm going to keep it one ball. Okay, so I'm going to turn this all there. So my tournament is right here. ID will be in the description. And let's go. No, hold on. Oh my gosh, I'm scared. Oh my gosh, hold up now. I thought I messed up. Oh, here it is, right here. One ball challenge, okay. All right.
I will be your guide and guide. Maybe one day we'll...
Okay, who do we choose?
Well, the mysterious side.
You know what? Herbert Brown. The ball into the hole. Okay, there's the skill shot. Okay, the monkey. There we go. 500,000.
There's some craftable tools.
Where'd the ball go? Oh, that was cool. Okay. No! I love the way this table looks, though. Kind of looks like Captain Jack Sparrow. Let's go again here. We'll choose someone else.
Maybe one day we'll see each other. Until then, well, the mysterious side.
Oops.
Well,
There we go. Skill shot's pretty easy. Oh, that's a dangerous shot right there. No! Well, I'm glad this table is on unlimited attempts because I would have wasted a lot of mine. I'm going to keep it here, guys, and I hope you have fun with Vern's Mysterious Island. And, yeah, I'll see you for the next one. Thanks for tuning in. Till next time.